Hey everyone, welcome to the Green Room. Different video today. I'm going to be talking about a tragedy that happened a couple weeks ago that people are calling the Holy Thursday massacre. I'm not going to show footage of the event. There was body cam footage and also just cell phone camera footage. I'm not going to show that because it's all over the place and many of us don't need to see that anymore. So we're going to talk about the facts of the event as I understand them, and we're going to talk about what I think we should be doing as reptile keepers in response to that event. I made a short video last week and put it up on a couple different social media platforms saying that I wasn't going to make a full video in response to this. And after I thought about it for a few more days, I changed my mind. I think it's important that this stays in the forefront. And my concern before was that I didn't want this all to become white noise, but I also realized after putting that video out that many of my viewers didn't know about the event. I realized that not everybody is watching all the same channels that I'm watching. So from my perspective, I was inundated with people talking about it. But I realized that there are a lot of people who aren't aware of it, and I think everyone should be. So this is something that has gained national and international media attention. There have been a number of stories that just show up on regular nightly news about this. And basically what happened is on Thursday, April 6th, Florida Wildlife Commission officers showed up at a facility that belonged to Bill McAdam. Chris Coffey also kept snakes at his facility. The officers ended up killing 29 reticulated pythons, 5 Burmese pythons, and also accidentally killed Bill McAdam's completely legal to own pet boa named Big Cheryl that he had raised for over 10 years since that snake was a baby. That snake was gravid with about 32 or maybe 36 baby boas that were almost full term, would have been healthy, and they killed that snake. This happened basically because those officers aren't trained to know the difference between a python and a boa. Big Cheryl, the boa that was killed, was probably about this size when Bill McAdam first got her. Bill raised her for 10 years as his personal pet. I mean, a lot of times, even when you have a breeding operation, these animals are your pets. They certainly are for me. I have a very small breeding operation, but these are all my pets, and these are all animals that I have raised and that I love, and I just can't imagine. Now let's talk about the illegal python situation. This was not the case of somebody that was just sneaking around trying to keep illegal species. What happened here is that Chris Coffey was legally keeping and breeding pythons for many years in Florida. He had a conditional species permit, which for the last 10 years was how you could keep pythons. He complied with all the laws. You had to have a locked cage. You had to be you could be inspected at any time by the FWC, and he had been. His snakes were all microchipped. There were a number of hoops that he had to jump through in order to have that conditional species permit. Well, in 2001, Florida Wildlife Commission did away with the conditional species permit, and they just made them prohibited species. So at that point, keepers had 90 days to either rehome their animals or euthanize them. Or the only people, as far as I understand, the only people that could get a prohibited species permit were exhibitors. So if you were an exhibitor, you could keep your animal. Chris was not an exhibitor. What are you doing there, Mama? You gonna cruise around? I got distracted by Delilah trying to leave. Once that prohibited species situation took effect, Chris had 90 days to either rehome or euthanize his animals. That was his only choice. So Chris did rehome over 100 snakes, but after 90 days, he was in violation of the law. He contacted FWC to let them know that he needed more time and could he apply for an exhibitor's license. How does he do that? How does he apply for more time? They told him they would get back to him, and they didn't. What they did instead is they seized his animals, but he still had to hang on to them. In February of 2022, the FWC did what's called a constructive seizure. And what that means is they are taking ownership of the animals, but the animals still have to stay in Chris's care. So basically Chris had to feed them and take care of them and everything, but he was told that he now can't even try to rehome them. He's got to keep them. He can't euthanize them. He can't do anything but hang on to them because they now belong to the FWC. On April 6th, 2023, the FWC officers showed up with a bolt gun. Even for people who say they don't like snakes, when they hear about this event, it's horrific to them and shocking. These officers, when they showed up, did not intend on killing snakes that day, but they decided when they were there that it had to be done. So they spent 4 hours killing snakes with a bolt gun. That bolt gun method is supposed to be used in a 2-step process with wild animals in an emergency situation. These were not wild animals, and it was not an emergency situation, and they didn't use the 2-step process that is recommended to do this humanely. Without going into too many details, basically what happened is these snakes, bolt through the head to kill them, but that doesn't kill them right away. It's very slow and painful death if you don't do the second step. So this process is not intended for pet snakes or captive snakes, for one thing. But the other thing that makes this just awful is that these snakes suffered for a while before they died because the officers did not perform the procedure correctly. That's about all I'm going to get into as far as the details. There's footage and there are other videos that go more in depth as to what actually happened. We're going to move forward though at this point with this. So those are the facts of what happened as I understand them. I'm going to make a guess here though, and that guess is that this is probably not the first time that something like this has happened, where the FWC comes in and kills snakes in this manner. Because they knew they were being filmed. They knew exactly where that camera had been set before Chris Coffey left the room. And they just went about their business. And they did it as though they weren't trying to hide anything, as though this was just sort of standard procedure. They were teaching a guy how to use a bolt gun and just going through this assembly line of killing animals. This was just the first time that it happened on camera. That's my guess. So those are the basics of what happened. There are more details, and if you want more details, I encourage you to look at the videos on USARK's channel. Also, Kenan over at Camp Kenan did a great video from the perspective of someone who lives in Florida and keeps reptiles in Florida. He has a lot of knowledge. And Clint from Clint's Reptiles is going to be doing a live stream on this in the next day or so. That should be out. That will be out by the time this video is out, so you can look at that on his channel. I'm sure Clint is going to be very well researched and he'll take a really level-headed approach to this. Speaking of level-headed, let's talk about what we can do in response, not only as members of the reptile keeping community or members of the snake keeping community, but how about members of the massive community of people that just say, I love animals? Hopefully people who are animal lovers because of their furry, fluffy, cute pets also understand that animals like snakes don't deserve to be slaughtered and horribly treated. So it is totally appropriate to be horrified and angry and upset. But the way we express that to politicians, the powers that be, and what have you, needs to be a little bit measured. Because it's pretty common, I see this a lot, people see something tragic done to an animal and they immediately go, well, that should be done to that person. Which is really threatening violence, and we don't want to do that as a community. There are plenty of people already who look at reptile keepers as crazy, and you don't want to, you just want to be more measured than that. You don't want to come across as someone who is off their rocker when they're angry. So, again, expressing that you're angry about this, expressing that this was totally inappropriate and horrific is one thing, but the way you do it is very important. We want people to, especially when you're talking to your legislators, anybody in government, if you attend a rally or anything like that, you want to be as professional as possible, because you, as just a snake keeper at one of these events, is representing the entire community. Maybe you only have one lizard. You're still representing the entire community when you speak out about something like this. So we have to be very careful. Because aside from making the community look bad when somebody seems unhinged, it also makes the person who you're talking to or emailing just disregard your comments altogether. They just go, oh, this is a crazy person, I'm not going to listen to them. But if you come at them professionally and sort of in a helpful manner, you don't have to be overly polite, but let them know how you feel, but you're being professional about it. they're going to be way more apt to listen. And what we're trying to do here is affect change. We're not trying to punish. Like, we're not trying to punish. We definitely would love to see the people who carried out this act come to justice, right? So whether that means that they're fired or arrested or whatever. But we're not trying to punish a politician. If I send an email or if I leave a voicemail for a politician because of this event, I'm not trying to punish them. I'm trying to convince them that change needs to be made. And that has to be done in a really measured way. So we're going to talk about who you can contact, and I have a bunch of links below that I just got from the USARK video and I'm passing along. But they're all very important. First of all, supporting USARK and USARK Florida are very important, especially if you live in the United States or Canada even. These are two separate entities, USARK, USARK Florida. USARK fights for your rights to responsibly keep reptiles and amphibians in the United States. They do a ton of good work, and I think that any reptile or amphibian keeper, even if you just have one, should have a membership to USARK as part of just the cost of having this animal. USARK Florida does the same thing, but just within Florida. And Florida is the state that a lot of other states look to. They take their cues from Florida as to how to handle invasive species. How do you handle wildlife, stuff like that. So where Florida goes, your state might go. So it's very important that you're keeping up with what's happening in Florida and supporting USARK Florida. Now, you can become a member of USARK Florida for free. And membership numbers are super important, because when they go to a legislator or they go to court or something and they say, we are USARK Florida, we are this many members strong, that makes a big impact. But money is also important. I just became a gold member of USARK Florida. That's $75. So, even if you become a free member and you can send them $5 or $10, that's a great thing to do. Also, doing that with USARK. I think everybody should be a member of USARK as well. If you're a snake keeper, you don't have to feed them very often. It's very cheap to feed a snake. So all that money that you're saving on food, send some of it to USARK and USARK Florida. Right now, USARK Florida is in the middle of an ongoing 2-year-long lawsuit against FWC, saying that they didn't pass the Prohibited Species Act correctly. They didn't give people due process. They didn't give them enough time to rehome their animals. More importantly, though, they're saying that based on Florida's constitution, FWC doesn't have the right to regulate captive animals. They were created to regulate wildlife, and they're saying that captive animals are not wildlife. The mindset, I think, of these officers is, if it's an animal that doesn't belong in Florida, in the wild, we just kill it, and because that's what they're used to doing in the wild. Here, they walk into a facility, see all these pets, and they kind of take that same approach. These are animals that shouldn't be in the wild in Florida. We're going to kill them, and we're not going to pay much attention to even what species we're killing, and we're not going to pay attention to whether we do it humanely and whether the animal's suffering. We're just going to pop them with a bolt gun and set them aside and go to the next one for 4 hours. I got a little off track there. And my point is that this lawsuit that USARK Florida has against the FWC is ongoing, long-term, and expensive. So, they need the help. So we need to be calling for consequences for the officers that were involved in this, consequences for the FWC's actions just in general, changing their way of doing things. We're not trying to say abolish the FWC, because they do some very important things in Florida, and there are invasive species in Florida that need to be managed. There are just things that they're doing wildly wrong also, and that's what needs to be changed. If you live in Florida, there are links in the description below to find out who your senators and your congressional representatives are, so that you can contact them and let them know how you feel. Again, via email, maybe by phone. You might have that option as well. But again, however you contact them, be professional, lay out what's going on, let them know how you feel, but in a manner that is not threatening. Also, in the description of this video is an email link and the phone number to the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. And whether you live in Florida or not, you can call or email Ron and let him know how you feel about his ability to govern his state based on this department and the events that recently happened. I would keep it on topic, though. This should not be a partisan political call. If you have any problems with anything else that Ron DeSantis happens to be doing or saying, save that for a separate email or a separate phone call. Let's keep it on subject with this particular event. Let him know what you think. And again, you don't have to live in Florida to do that. You also, I think you can pretty much just find out who the legislators are in Florida and just write to them. I don't have those lists in the, linked below, but if you want to go that far, you could do that, because, I mean, anybody can let anybody know what they think. But I think it's important to flood the governor with people protesting this event. Are you able to get to Miami on May 10th and 11th? Do you live in the vicinity? Because there's going to be an FWC commission meeting on May 10th and 11th. And that is basically where the FWC sits down and listens to people tell them what they think. I know that a number of high-profile people will be there. Kennan is going to be there. He's going to speak, which is great because he's very knowledgeable and very well-spoken. But we want a bunch of other people there as well to tell the FWC what they think. So if you can make it to this commission meeting, go for it. There's information on that meeting linked below as well. This was not a fun video to make, but I hope that it helped to get the message out, and I feel good about my decision to come out with a full video talking about it. Please do whatever you can to support USARK Florida, support USARK, and do everything you can in response to this particular situation, as far as emailing, calling, whatever you can do. Once you're done taking action, feel free to come back to this channel and click on literally any other video on this channel, and it'll be a lot more fun than this one, I promise. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.